Backseas Musical Podcast.
Resistance is useless!
Do you ever fire up Spotify and then find yourself going down this deep rabbit hole, not really sure of what you want to listen to? I find myself doing that 15 times a day. And occasionally, I'll bump into something that's been downloaded, according to Spotify, 17 million times. Like, where the hell have I been? That was the case when I accidentally bumped into the music of Clyde. Clyde is a singer-songwriter from Canada, and what's stunning about her music isn't just that the songs have been downloaded and streamed millions and millions of times. What's stunning is the actual music itself. Clyde is a young woman who has reached back to extract some incredibly broad influences to embellish the craftsmanship of her amazing songwriting. On one hand, you feel the influences of Joni Mitchell and Amy Winehouse and Bonnie Raitt, and on the other hand, you hear the emotion and passion of folk and blues and a whole lot more. And that's only part of it. This is an artist whose voice and lyrics can rip your soul right out of your body and have you crying for more. Cat's music is heartbreaking, engaging, seductive, personal. In short, it's fantastic. And in spite of all of those influences, her music is all hers. Clyde is about to release her third album. This one comes out in February on the 17th, called Down Rounder. The first single from the album has already been released on Spotify, called I Feel It, followed by Mystic Light, and they're both great. And check out her albums from 2017, like Ivory Castanets, or her 2019 album, Hunter's Trance. Just great, great records. So much so that I've become a very big fan in a very short period of time. And so it's been a real pleasure to talk to Clyde on Backseas Musical Podcast.
Hello.
Hey, Kat, how are you?
Hey, how are you?
I'm very good. Good to have you here.
Yeah, no worries.
I have to tell you, and I don't mean this to be pulling your leg by any stretch of the imagination, but I have totally enjoyed getting acquainted with the Clyde universe. I mean, honestly, between the songs and the arrangements and your voice is just there's an incredible richness to it that seems to come beyond your years, and I don't mean that in a patronizing way. I feel like there's just something very special to your work. So thank you. It's been a hell of a week so far. So and I blame you.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you.
You're sitting on a brand new record that's coming out in just a couple of weeks. I asked this of other people because to me this would be the most difficult part of being an artist. You finish a record and there's a period of time between you're done and it coming out. How do you manage that? Does that just drive you freaking crazy? Because it certainly would for me.
I mean, I feel like there's a lot to do that fills in that space, like doing music videos and figuring out the release and what comes first and everything like that. So it's not like yeah, it's definitely like I'm definitely ready for it to not be in my hands anymore, but I am like grateful for the time where it still belongs to me for a little bit longer.
See, I've heard it described as passing. It's kind of like passing a kidney stone. You know it's time, but it really is time to get out of you. You just want it away from you. But
Yeah.
but great stuff so far. The two tracks that I've heard though. But I want to ask you because I've read conflicting information about where did you grow up in Canada? Are you in Quebec or in Ontario, or have you been? Is it both?
I grew up in Ontario,
Okay.
and I lived in Quebec for a time over the pandemic and a bit before that. So
Gotcha.
yeah.
Because my great grandparents were from Quebec, Sherbrooke. And,
Oh wow.
yeah,
Okay.
so between smoked meats and poutine and 9% pêche mortels and hockey, I feel like I'm just
Yes.
about Canadian enough.
Yeah, I think that qualifies you.
Oh, good,
I think
good. It's always interesting to me when I stumble across an artist that I may not have been all that familiar with, and I put you in this category. Like I said, I'm really just getting familiar with your music, and I'm and it's surprising to me how well formed. And when I say that you seem I don't know whether it's wise beyond your years or developed beyond your years musically. I really mean that in a very complimentary way. For someone who is under the well, I'm old enough to be your father, but it's yeah, I'm amazed by it because I know it takes a lot of hard work to get to that point where musically you've found your voice, arranging those songs, you've found traction and your footing, and now you have enough confidence to take those songs, strip them down, make them perhaps more acoustic. Tell me about the process of that for you. This didn't just occur overnight. This clearly took a lot of hard work.
Yeah, I mean, this record in particular took a lot of work. I think in the beginning, I had the intention of just sort of doing it at my home studio in Quebec with my partner, and it was going to be very like easygoing and just sort of pick it apart over the pandemic. And yeah, so I started working on that and doing that, and it was really nice to have the opportunity to let the songs like sink in and breathe and like have time and space, which I don't feel like is an opportunity that happens too often. I feel like often, you have the songs and then you got to just get into the studio and get them done. So yeah, we worked that way for a long time, and it was just really difficult throughout the pandemic, very isolated. And there was a bunch of things that happened. Our place ended up being riddled with mold, so
Mm.
we had to tear everything down and start anew. And after that, it was really like difficult transition to like move and leave, and then everything felt so crazy and up in the air. And there was a few producers that I was speaking with and interested in, and I ended up getting connected with Tony Berg through my manager Peter, and we ended up going through the songs again and just like looking at them through fresh eyes and sort of grounding in them over again, because they
Yeah.
kind of been thrown up in the air. And then I worked with him over like just like Zoom calls for a few months, and then he didn't really have the time or space to produce it, so I was looking for someone else. And then I think it was like in February I got a message from him being like, what are you doing next week? You want to just come into the studio? I have 6 free days. We'll try and get it all done. And I was like, hell yeah. I'd been
Yeah.
working on this fucking thing for like 2 years. It was haunting me every day and every night, and I just wanted to get it done. And it was such an exciting opportunity to go to Sound City Studios. So yeah, I went there, and he had all the musicians ready for me, and it was just like this amazing, flawless like experience. Yeah.
When you're working with a guy like that, and obviously, he wouldn't have agreed to give you the time. 6 days, is a pretty short amount of time, but nevertheless, someone who's worked with, but he's someone who's worked with Taylor Swift and Paul McCartney is not a guy who wouldn't. I mean, he can choose who he wants to work with because he sees whatever he sees, promise or whatever. Do you think that if the pandemic hadn't happened, that the songs would not have been ready for that process? Obviously, a lot of things happened and the timing was right to work with him, but that might not have been the case if you were trying to rush through those songs, in 2020 or 2021. It may have just been, gone too fast, and that maybe in a weird, perverse way, that, that waiting around was actually a benefit to this record.
I definitely think the waiting around was benefit, even though it was extremely uncomfortable and painful experience to wait. I think it was great, and I think it allowed the songs to grow and change in a way that they really needed to.
The couple of songs that I've heard that are on the record right now, they're really interesting. I Feel It, and then the follow up of Mystic Light. Tell me about those songs and what they're about. Especially, I Feel It. It's a very intimate sounding song, and Mystic Light I actually think is just a fantastic song altogether. But tell me about those two as you're looking to the release of the full record.
Yeah, I mean, Mystic Light actually, that was a newer one that was thrown on there. I probably wrote that around February of last year, just before going into the studio. with Tony. But yeah, it's really just about like wanting to understand my purpose and why I'm here and my past and things that have led me, and kind of feeling hopeless and lost, but calling out for, the mystery of life to wink at me, to make sure, to let me know that everything is all right and I'll be okay and things will work out. But yeah, that's kind of
Yeah.
what that song is about.
Your songs generally seem to be you're very emotionally engaged, and I've heard you describe yourself as an empath, and I've been accused of the same blessing and the same curse because it really is both. But artistically speaking, though, it sounds like what you've been able to do, and this is really kind of a credit to the artist that you're developing into, is that it seems to give you just a deeper well of expressing yourself. Like those emotions are more accessible to you than they are for a lot of other people that when they're running lyrically or even just the way the songs are constructed, there's not necessarily that emotional component to it that's so evident in what you've been doing for the last couple of years. I mean, do you see it that way? Has it been easier for you to kind of draw from an emotional experience to put things back into like a tangible form?
Yeah, I think I've always felt things like very, very deeply. And I feel like for a long time I thought like everyone was like that, but I'm kind of seeing now and understanding now that I don't think people all feel that way. And I think, for me, like music has been a way for me to understand and sort of dissect all those like really deep, complex feelings. So yeah, and I mean that's kind of what the song I Feel It is about, just being very sensitive and feeling a lot all the time. And in that song it's kind of more seeing the positive, but it definitely is a double-sided coin, and it can be very overwhelming to feel so deeply all the time
It's a
and
pain in the
feel
ass, isn't it?
yeah, it's a fucking pain in the ass.
Wouldn't it be just nice to say, fuck it, I don't care? But you just
Yeah,
can't. You just can't do it. It's not in
yeah,
you. It's not in your DNA.
yeah.
Um, I mean, I was listening to some of the older things that you had done, and one of the songs that really leaps out, "Mama Said," would be a good example of this. There's when you hear that song, there's a sense of fear in that song, a sense of disruption, and then it ends cold, as if to say, "Hey, now wait a minute, where is this all going?" It's a song that has been streamed 17 million times on
Mm.
on Spotify. Clearly strikes a chord with people, and that's just one of the many songs you've written that does just that. And I don't know how autobiographical some of these songs may be, but I think everyone kind of feels that feeling of what you were trying to express in that song because there's a rawness about it that's not it's not standard. You know what I mean? There's a lot of people that could never write something and make you feel like there's a major problem in this song between who's ever involved in it. The subject matter of this song, there's something really poisonous going on.
Wow. um Yeah, I mean it's definitely, touching on themes of like, being forced to go through changes that aren't necessarily right changes,
Yeah.
and being very confused and kind of like battling with that and trying to make sense of it, and, spending a lot of time thinking about it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I hear you. But it's also interesting how, when you decided to redo that song on the Good Bones record, how when
Mhm.
you strip all the other arrangement to it and it's just you and a guitar and that's all. It transforms that song into something even more powerful. And that record in particular, the Good Bones record, where you're kind of, reinventing a lot of your songs, just shows that, there's a you must have a great deal of trust in what you are saying to know that these songs work, whether you got a full band behind you or whether it's acoustically focused. And when I hear like the stuff on the new album, I feel kind of like the same thing. It's like the acoustic approach to those songs almost are part of the the intent to make it more powerful. Am I reading that correctly, or am I you full of crap on that one?
I mean, yeah, like I feel like, with Good Bones, stripping everything back, I've played a lot just solo, and I really I feel like those songs stand on their own. And, I think, yeah, if you've got good bones, then it's gonna be good. So I feel like, yeah, I mean, as far as like trusting, I mean, if it feels good to me, that's good enough for me. I don't really think too much about it, I guess.
I listened to an interview you did with a person interviewing you was kind of asking you a little bit about your background and whether you grew up in a musical household, and it sounds like your parents were not particularly musical, but you had this interesting relationship with a couple of uncles that were very musical. Obviously, that had to be a pretty profound thing for you at a young age to kind of be a part of the experience of making music with people in your family. Tell me about how important that was for you, and at what point did you say, "I think this is something that I want to focus on in my life"?
Yeah, I think a lot of my childhood I was very much an observer. I kind of, yeah, I was very much an observer. So with my uncles and my grandfather, I remember, hearing him play fiddle in the basement, and there was this grate upstairs with a rug on it. And I remember taking the rug off and just laying on the ground and just listening. And I just thought the fiddle is such an emotional instrument. So I really loved that. And then, yeah, seeing my uncles play, like, um I never really played with them. It was more like it was my first experience, like seeing someone play live music and play the guitar, like really play the guitar, and seeing them play a few shows, like at like barn parties and sort of like rural gatherings.
How Canadian does that sound? We had a
Is
barn
very
party.
is very
We put on our
Canadian.
best flannel, set the bear traps up, and we had a barn party.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, that was kind of my first experience. And then like, um, when I was around, I think like 11 or 12, I moved with my mom and brother to this rural area, and I had a neighbor, and his parents owned a music store. And so I ended up hanging out with him all the time, and ended up actually teaching guitar to younger kids. And we ended up doing this thing called the Big Wheels Show, which his parents took all the teachers and created like a little show, and we did like fairs and stuff and just played covers. And but that was like my first experience, and that was when I was around 13,
Right.
14, like playing shows. um but yeah, I don't know, like just I guess seeing my uncles just like express themselves on an instrument. And I've just always felt very drawn to that and felt like that's something I needed to pour out.
Yeah. At some point, you take all that experience, with a band or with your family, and then you start to write music. And I know that when a lot of people start out writing music, it's not necessarily music that is terribly sophisticated. It takes time to develop that craft. At what point did you say, "Hey, you know what? I think this is something that I can actually do and can actually be really good at"? At what age did that start to kind of gel and germinate for you?
I mean, I kind of feel like like kind of stepping into that now. I mean, I've been doing this for a while, but I felt like I've really grown in my own confidence and my own self-awareness, and just like knowing what I want and where I want to go, and feeling like I am enough and I can participate. It's a very like male dominated industry, and it can be difficult to exist in the realm. And I think like, I mean, I feel like during the pandemic I really had a lot of time to reflect, and why am I doing this? And it felt like for a long time I just kind of was on the track and just kind of rolling along and just seeing where everything took me, and um just riding on the wind. But Yeah, I mean, there were a few moments, when I saw like concerts. I remember seeing one of the first concerts I ever saw was Bright Eyes, and I think I was like 17. And I remember watching him play and thinking, I could do that. I know I could do that. I can fucking rock at it.
It's it's interesting that when I hear your music, I hear influences that even predate me to a certain extent. I mean, I hear in your music and your voice things like Bonnie Raitt and Joni Mitchell and Patsy Cline and Amy Winehouse, and I don't know if those are intentional inspirations to you, but what are your inspirations musically? Where do you draw motivation from?
Yeah, I mean, I I draw from a lot of different things, but initially, like, older music really caught me. Like when I first heard Lead Belly and old blues, Robert Johnson and Lightning Hopkins,
Hmm.
that really grabbed me and felt like just this like very true and honest and simple expression, and to have so much going on in such a simple form. The forms are very repetitive, and often the melodies are as well, but it's like the little tiny things behind and in between uh that really create this uh like rainbow of color and of emotion and things that can't necessarily be put into words. um
It's a really good answer because I hear all of that stuff, and there aren't a lot of artists now that necessarily you know will cite Leadbelly or Lightning Hopkins or any of those those profound blues greats, and yet blues offers this, like you say, kind of like this wide palette of emotional uh depth and texture, and that's one of the things that inspires so many people about the blues, is because that emotion is right there. So I think when we've talked about how emotionally engaged your lyrics are and how the arrangements really embellish those emotions beautifully, it's not surprising for me to hear you say that blues play such an important part in your art. I mean, very clearly, there's something that's touching you, uh, musically, and I definitely hear it. So I got to applaud you because there's not a you don't hear that very often. You just I don't know. I don't want to say that blues is a dying art, because that would be terribly wrong to say, but it is not necessarily the kind of thing that people wearing on their sleeves as much as they once were, and I think that kind of I think that's what makes your music so interesting, because you hear it, and it's right there, ripping your heart out right through your throat, and I think that's what's so fantastic about it. So yeah, very cool answer. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
When you get ready for the release of this album, uh, and obviously I look at Spotify, I look at some of those numbers, when you know the song we talked about before, 17 million downloads on that one song, and all these other songs have performed very well, at least on that platform, and I assume that hopefully down the road it'll perform as well on others. When you see that kind of reaction from people, and I assume live you must feel this too, um, are you surprised by the reaction that your songs have gotten? I mean, what is how do you even process that 17 million streams of just one song out of dozens of really great songs? How does that even work in your head?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I feel like I've never really been able to conceptualize like numbers like that. I mean, I'm not really sure. I mean, maybe there are people out there that can. I just can't imagine that many people um listening to that. I mean, I feel so grateful that it's found the places where it belongs, and that's really all I can hope for, is that it reaches the people that it moves and it needs to meet with. And um that's kind of the point.
Yeah.
Point for me.
After everything is all said and done and released, are you going on the road? Are you going to be touring with this, or what's the plan moving ahead?
Yeah, I'm heading out to UK in February. So the month of February, I'll be touring with an artist called Lissy and opening for her, and I'll be releasing my album out there. And then yeah, I'm just deciding, just figuring out my shows for the rest of the summer and things like that.
You know, we Americans have a hard time imagining that what else goes on in the world, or we kind of isolate ourselves in the most bizarre way. And I think Americans, when they think of the Canadian music scene, they kind of limit it to Rush and Loverboy and Triumph, and that's about it. And they don't get beyond that. You could very easily have gone, and maybe you still could, gone to New York or Los Angeles, but you still, very much connected to living in Canada. What has there been any pressure for you to go to, other places to perform and promote yourself, or has Canada been a good ground for you?
Well, it's funny, when I kind of started out, I was signed to an American label. So I ended up actually touring much more in the States than I have in Canada. And right now, actually, I'm in Nashville, and I'm heading back home at the end of the week, or at the start of the week. But I've just been here and dancing and changing my scene and doing some writing. But I don't know, it's been nice to kind of be here because I don't feel like a big community of music in Canada, and that can be kind of difficult. And, coming here and there's just like a huge community here. And so I'm not sure. I think maybe in the future I'll change my scene, but I never like to stay in one place too long. So
Yeah. Well, Nashville would be a good place for you. That's for
yeah,
sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even though I wouldn't classify you as a country artist by any means, that's still a pretty good place to hang out.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's been I really love to dance. So I've been doing a heck of a lot of dancing. So
Good. Well, I'm excited about the records coming out February 17th called Down Rounder. I'm so impressed with everything I've heard so far. I mean, and I mean that sincerely. I'm just it's amazing stuff, and I wish great things for you, Kat. I really do.
thank you so much. It's really been a pleasure to speak with you.
Yeah, it has. No.
Yeah, it is. That's all right. Toot your horn. That's okay.
Kat, a real pleasure to meet you, and best of luck.
Lovely. Thank you so much.
All right, take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye. The name of the new record from Kat Clyde is called Down Rounder. It's coming out on February 17th. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, feel free to like it, review it, share it, tell all your friends about it. You can reach me at bax@rock102.com. I'd love to hear what you think. And thanks again for listening to Baxy's Musical Podcast.